My name is Marcus Ford. I'm 41 years old. For the last 17 years, I worked as the Senior Financial Operations Manager at Virexim, a publicly traded medical tech company headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. I wasn't flashy. I didn't climb ladders by charming executives at golf courses or kissing up during boardroom meetings. I built my reputation by solving the problems no one else wanted to touch: broken procurement chains, failed audits, chaotic merger reports. I cleaned up messes, quietly, professionally. That was my legacy. For nearly 2 decades, I gave everything to Virexim. I showed up early, left late, trained new hires, covered for managers, and helped the company scale from a niche biotech firm to a major player in the medical diagnostics sector. I was proud of my work. I believed in what we were building, until the day I became expendable. 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 2 lymphoma. It hit me like a freight train. 1 minute I was in a quarterly forecast meeting. The next I was in an oncologist's office, staring at a treatment schedule: chemotherapy, every Tuesday and Friday for 12 weeks. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I didn't tell most of my team. I just informed HR, submitted my treatment plan, and requested a temporary reduction in hours while still managing high-level financial reports from home. I thought it would be enough. I was wrong. My direct supervisor, Brandon Keller, the newly minted CFO, was one of those Ivy League prodigies with no soul behind the smile. Young, charismatic, media-polished. He called himself a performance-first leader. What he meant was that if you weren't producing at a 10% every second, you were a liability. I trained Brandon when he joined the company as an intern. I showed him how to clean up vendor invoice trails and automate cost analysis reports using code I wrote myself. Now he was my boss, and apparently, my judge. 2 weeks into treatment, I was summoned into a video meeting labeled Performance Review. No prior notice, no agenda. I joined the call in my home office, pale from chemo, wearing a sweater to cover the chills that had set into my bones. Brandon was already on the screen, smiling like a man ready to sell a car, not destroy a life. "Marcus," he said, voice smooth as marble, "let's get straight to it. Your output has dropped 26% over the last 10 business days. Your responsiveness is down. And I noticed some inconsistencies in the Q1 forecast sheets you submitted last Thursday." I blinked. "Brandon, I'm in chemotherapy. That's documented." "I'm aware," he replied flatly, "and I admire your courage. But this is a business, not a charity. We're restructuring to stay competitive, and unfortunately I have to make some tough calls." Tough calls. That was his term for gutting the man who held his position together for 7. "In light of your recent underperformance," he continued, "you're being reassigned to a junior advisory role under Mia Chen in logistics analytics. No direct reports. No budget oversight. We'll revisit your position after Q3. I didn't speak at first. I couldn't. My mouth went dry. I stared at the screen, at the man I had mentored, promoted, defended, telling me I was now disposable because my body had failed me. "I see," I finally said. I kept my tone calm. Too calm, maybe. He nodded, probably mistaking my restraint for surrender. "Like I said, Marcus," he finished with a practiced smile, "it's nothing personal. It's just business." I looked directly into my webcam and whispered 2 words. "Remember that." He blinked, confused. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't go public. Not yet. But I would remember. I would build my strength, wait in silence, and when the moment was right, I'd show Brandon exactly what happens when you mistake quiet for weak. I logged off that call in silence. The screen went black, but the moment stayed burned into my mind. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, just staring at nothing. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort you. It confronts you, reminds you that you're now fighting 2 battles, one inside your body and one outside of it. For 17 years, I gave that company everything. Late nights, missed birthdays, holidays spent hunched over balance sheets. I even defended them during last year's SEC audit, when sloppy record-keeping almost triggered a regulatory investigation. It was my strategy that cleaned it up, my workaround that saved them tens of millions. But now, one illness, one stretch of chemo, and I was no longer strategic. I was underperforming. I didn't tell my wife right away. She was already managing enough. The appointments, the side effects, the worry. She kept asking if I needed anything: more meds, more rest, more support. But what I needed most was something she couldn't give me. Dignity. I had always been the one who fixed things. The dependable one. The guy everyone came to when the math didn't add up. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. That wasn't my style. Instead, I opened my old work laptop, the one I used before the company switched to cloud-only systems. It still had copies of tools I'd built: macros, budget forecast simulators, vendor dashboards. I clicked through them slowly, like flipping through an old photo album. This code had built Virexon's backbone, and yet, smiling Brandon, looked me in the eye and reduced me to a liability. I knew right then. I wasn't going to let that be my ending. I wasn't strong enough to fight him in court. I didn't have the energy for workplace drama or HR appeals. But what I did have was knowledge. Deep, technical, irreplaceable knowledge. I knew the real numbers behind our quarterlies. I knew which patents were being overvalued on paper. I knew which internal projections were smoke and mirrors for shareholders. I knew which contracts were built on false revenue promises to pump stock price during earnings calls. I wasn't just some middle manager. I was the damn nervous system of that company. And they forgot that. Or worse, they assumed I was too tired, too weak, too distracted by illness to do anything about it. That was their mistake. Because cancer didn't kill my mind, and it didn't kill my memory. I had nothing left to lose, and everything they didn't want the world to know. I opened a blank spreadsheet, hands trembling just slightly. It wasn't a financial model this time. It was something else. A blueprint. I didn't know it yet, but in that moment, I had started building the instrument that would take down the very tower they had shoved me out of, piece by piece, bite by bite. Over the next 3 weeks, I became two people. To the outside world, I was the demoted employee going through cancer treatment, quietly fading into the background. I showed up on Zoom calls with muted energy. I submitted minor reports, kept my head down, answered emails with thanks and will do. Brandon probably thought I was too tired to care. HR sent me an automated wellness resources, PDF. A few old coworkers messaged me with sympathy, then drifted back into corporate autopilot. But behind the curtain, I was something else. I was awake, focused, alive in a way I hadn't felt in months. There's a moment in chemo when your body starts to adapt. The nausea fades a little. The brain fog lifts. The fatigue is still there, but it stops being loud. That's when I got to work. I didn't hack into anything. I didn't have to. Brandon had never revoked my back-end admin credentials. He thought my new role didn't require access, but it hadn't occurred to him that I'd built the very reporting system he was now managing. His arrogance became my opportunity. I started by pulling quarterly financial archives from the last 3 years. Not the published investor versions, but the internal drafts that never left the server. I cross-referenced those with board meeting transcripts, vendor payment logs, and private memos that had been buried under layers of folders no one outside of finance ever read. And what I found made my stomach turn more than the chemo ever did. Fabricated growth projection, deferred expense records that were never disclosed, inflated valuation assumptions for an AI diagnostics tool that didn't even exist beyond prototype. They were pumping the stock for investor presentations, then cashing out bonuses tied to those fake milestones. Brandon wasn't just tolerating it. He was orchestrating it. He had signed off on every line, and the CFO before him quietly retired 6 months ago with a golden parachute and no accountability. I backed everything up, encrypted copies, cloud mirrors, offline hard drives, nothing too flashy. Nothing traceable, just quiet insurance. But I didn't want to go to the press. Not yet. I needed leverage, timing. That came faster than expected. One morning, I received an email from a former colleague, Sarah McNeil, someone I had mentored years ago when she was a junior analyst. She had recently joined the SEC as a mid-level compliance investigator. Subject line, "Is everything okay at Virexon?" She didn't elaborate, but the timing told me everything. The rumors had already begun. Maybe another department had flagged something. Maybe a vendor was asking too many questions. Whatever it was, I knew the window was opening. I replied in the plainest terms possible. "Call me, not from your work line." We spoke that night. I told her I couldn't say much, not yet. But I had documents she might want to see. She didn't ask why I was doing it. She knew me well enough to understand. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about integrity. I asked her for one thing. "Give me 1 week to finish something." She agreed. And so I kept digging. Every document, every number I uncovered wasn't just a data point. It was a crack in the wall they had built with lies. And I wasn't just going to reveal it. I was going to make sure the whole damn thing collapsed in one calculated, public, and irreversible moment. They had stripped me of my title, but they forgot who I was. I wasn't a position on an org chart. I was the system they relied on. And now I was the virus inside it. The following Monday, I walked into the Virexon headquarters for the first time since my demotion. No one expected me to come in. I had the option to work remotely. My health was still fragile, but I wanted them to see me, not as a ghost of who I was, but as a shadow they should have feared. I wore a black blazer over a dark shirt, no tie, no company badge, just a USB drive in my pocket and clarity in my eyes. Brandon wasn't in the office. He was at a biotech investment conference in Chicago, giving a keynote titled "Scaling Smart: How Virexon Built Financial Stability in the Post-COVID Era." The irony was delicious. I stopped at the security desk, smiled at the new intern who didn't even know my name, and walked upstairs like I still belonged there. Because technically, I did. I made my way into a private meeting room on the 5th floor, one I used to reserve for vendor review. I booted up a company-issued laptop and connected to the internal network with my old admin credentials. Still active, still full access. It was almost disrespectful how careless they were. Then I opened the folder I had prepared on my encrypted drive. Title: Earnings Misrepresentation, Internal Audit Discrepancies, Q3 and Q4. No emotions, just numbers. Spreadsheets, invoice trails, email confirmations, metadata logs. A roadmap of lies. All leading to Brandon's signature. And at the very end, time-stamped video recording, screen-captured footage of Brandon instructing one of the finance interns over Slack to reclassify expenses before the board review. His exact words, "Just move it. We'll reconcile after the call." No one checks line item detail on a 60-page deck. I uploaded the folder to a secure anonymous email server. Then I sent it to 3 addresses, TOIS, one to the SEC Office of Market Integrity, one to Sarah McNeil marked confidential attachment, and one just for style to Brandon Keller's corporate inbox. Subject line: "This is business, not a charity." Then I left. I didn't wait to see the reaction. I didn't want to, because the real move came next. I knew Virexon was scheduled to release its Q2 earnings 2 days later. Brandon had hyped the quarter on LinkedIn, hinting at record growth and breakthrough diagnostics deal. The stock had already climbed 6% on speculation. But what no one outside the building knew, except me, was that those projections were built on false data. That same day, I bought a short position against Virexon stock through a shell brokerage account I had quietly set up months earlier. Not a huge one, just enough to make the message sting when the time came. Then I waited. It took 36 hours. On Wednesday afternoon, the SEC issued a preliminary inquiry notice into Virexon's earnings reporting history. CNBC picked it up. Bloomberg followed within the hour. By Thursday morning, headlines were everywhere. Virexon under federal scrutiny for potential financial misconduct. Whistleblower tips spark investigation into medical tech giant. CFO Brandon Keller under fire. The company stock dropped 20. By the end of the trading day, it was down. That night, I sat at home in my worn-out hoodie, sipping herbal tea, watching Brandon's face on the evening news. He looked rattled, tired, exposed. They quoted his old speech. At Virexon, we pride ourselves on integrity, transparency, and financial clarity. I almost laughed. The next morning, the board issued a press release. Brandon Keller was taking a leave of absence, effective immediately. An emergency audit committee had been formed. Investors were demanding full transparency. Internal systems were being reviewed. And I went to chemo. I walked into the clinic with a quiet smile on my face. The nurse said, I looked better, stronger. I thanked her and sat down for my infusion. As the drip began, I opened my phone and checked the Virexon stock again. Down and still falling. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to speak. The numbers were doing it for me. I had written the code that built the company. Now I had written the code that brought it down. By Friday morning, Virexon's stock had lost nearly 60% of its value. Trading was halted twice before noon. Analysts were scrambling to understand what had happened. Reddit threads lit up with theories. Some thought it was a cyber attack. Others suspected a disgruntled investor. No one imagined the truth, that the person responsible had been in the building the entire time, working quietly in the margins while they all looked the other way. Brandon Keller, the golden boy of Virexon, had gone dark. No press statements, no social media activity, no public apology, just silence. The board scrambled. Within 72 hours, they released a second statement. Brandon was no longer on leave. He was terminated for cause. An independent audit had confirmed what my files had shown: fraudulent earnings manipulation, suppression of financial risks, and direct interference in corporate disclosures. The moment I read the news, I shut my laptop. I didn't celebrate. I didn't dance or drink or shout. I just breathed. For the first time in months, I could breathe without that crushing pressure in my chest, not from cancer, but from humiliation, from powerlessness. That was gone now. Brandon had built his empire on deception. I had dismantled it with truth. The irony? I wasn't the only one who benefited. Virexon's stock eventually began to stabilize, not because the scandal faded, but because the company took real action. The board appointed a new interim CFO, someone from compliance, not PR. They reissued corrected earnings statements. They opened their books. The truth hurt, but it saved them from complete collapse. I received no public credit. I never wanted it. But word spread internally, quietly, respectfully. Old colleagues I hadn't heard from in months sent messages. I heard what you did. You didn't deserve what happened to you. You saved the company, man. In a way no one else ever could. I responded politely. Nothing dramatic. I wasn't looking for admiration. But their words mattered. So did Sarah McNeil's. She called me 2 weeks after the story broke. Her voice was steady, professional, but softer than before. You're a rare breed, Marcus, she said. Most people in your position would have tried to burn the place down. You didn't. You held a mirror up to the truth and let it speak for itself. I didn't know what to say, so I just told her thank you. She paused, then added, You ever consider consulting? There are a lot of companies that could use someone like you. Someone who understands the system, but refuses to abuse it. I told her I'd think about it, and I did. Over the next few weeks, as chemo slowly came to an end, I found myself with more energy and more clarity. I didn't want to go back to Virexon, not even in a better role. That chapter was closed. But the idea of starting something new, that felt right. So I did. I opened a boutique consulting firm, focused on financial integrity for mid-sized companies and startups, not big flashy firms. Not the kind that hire people like Brandon. I wanted to work with people who still believed in doing things right. I called it Ford Advisory Group. Simple, honest, mine. Within the first 3 months, I had 5 clients. Within 6, I had a waiting list. I wasn't rich, but I was free. Free to work by my own rules. Free to take days off when I needed to. Free to mentor young analysts who reminded me of myself. Free to live. 1 year later, I was officially in remission. The cancer was gone. So was the resentment. I had no interest in revenge anymore. That part of the story was finished. What remained was something far more powerful. A life on my own terms, and the quiet knowledge that Brandon Keller would spend the rest of his career explaining why the word terminated now followed his name. Not because someone hated him, but because someone he underestimated refused to stay silent. It's been 5 years since that day I whispered, "Remember that," into a webcam and quietly dismantled a corporate lie with nothing but truth, evidence, and time. The scar from my port still runs just under my collarbone, a reminder of the war my body fought while my mind waged one of its own. But the cancer is gone, the chemo is done, and the rage that once kept me awake at night, that too has passed. Ford Advisory Group is thriving. What started as a solo operation in my home office now includes 7 analysts, 2 project managers, and a quiet, unshakable culture built on one simple rule: no shortcuts. We don't work with companies looking to reposition optics or massage numbers. We work with the ones that want clean books, scalable strategy, and the kind of financial clarity that earns respect, not speculation. I never went back to chasing titles. I don't need them. My clients trust me because I've lived what most consultants only pretend to understand. Some of them even know the story. The real story. Not the rumors or the headlines, but the calm version. The version I tell when a CEO is about to compromise their values for one more quarter of inflated metrics. I tell them what it cost one man to forget that people are not disposable, that numbers can be manipulated, but truth has a longer shelf life. And most of the time, they listen. I never heard from Brandon Keller again. Last I checked, he was consulting for a startup in Miami under a different title. No one in his industry fully trusts him anymore. His name is a cautionary tale in certain finance circles. Not infamous, just quietly tainted, which, frankly, is worse. Jessica, my wife, stood by me through all of it. Through the demotion, the chemo, the uncertainty. She never asked me to forgive or forget. She just stayed. She held my hand when my hair fell out, laughed when I was stubborn, and never once treated me like I was broken. We bought a small cabin just outside Asheville, North Carolina. On weekends, we take long drives into the mountain. I built a screened-in porch where I read most mornings before the day starts. Coffee, sunrise, silence. No board meetings, no fabricated projections, just clarity. Sometimes I think back to that day. The call, the line. This is a business, not a charity. It was said to belittle me, to strip me of value. But now I see it differently. Business isn't charity, sure, but it also isn't cruelty. It's people. It's promises. It's trust. You break those things too many times, and eventually the stock price follows. The best part, no one saw it coming. No one expected the quiet, pale guy with the IV drip and the faded company badge to be the one who'd light the match. But I didn't burn the building down. I opened the windows and let the truth in. They did the rest. That's the thing about revenge. The best kind doesn't destroy people, it reveals them. And when the dust settles, it's not your anger that defines you. It's what you build in the aftermath. I built peace. I built a second chance. And every day I get to live the kind of life no executive title or boardroom can ever manufacture. A life built on truth.